Terrific.
Right
So this is the Hot Seat podcast at Crossroads United Methodist Church in Washington, Illinois. My name is Jason Mulliver. I'm the directing pastor here, and we have...
I'm Tim Lee. I'm the contemporary worship director.
And we have Patrick Schwinn.
Yeah.
Hello.
Schwinny. What? Schwinn dog?
Big Schwinn dog.
Well, hey, on this podcast, you've heard some of them, right?
I have listened to a couple of them.
Awesome.
I listened to Tim's. I've listened to Pastor Megan's.
Great.
I've listened to both Josh's.
Sweet.
Before he left. And then, I've listened to about 4 or 5.
Great.
I'd say.
So you know that you are the content.
Yeah, basically.
And so, yeah.
Then there's obviously, he's heard all the questions that we could possibly come up with.
I don't know about all of them.
Yeah. So basically, we want to hear your story, right? Of how, from when you were born until today, everybody who's following Christ in the present is following Christ because of certain people, certain events that work together in their life at God's guidance to bring them to this point, right? And so we are trying to mine people's stories and hear what happened in their life and how they ended up following Jesus in the present. And so tell us just a little bit about yourself, where you live, what you do, a little bit about your family life. Yeah.
Yeah, so I live in Peoria. I just bought a house there last year. Been there since July of last year, so it has been a year.
Yeah.
Live there with my dog. His name's Bo, my little buddy. I work at OSF as a respiratory therapist. I've done that for 2 years.
You've been busy.
So very busy. Very, very busy. I was working 60, 70-hour weeks sometimes. So I was busy for sure.
Yeah.
I'm an only child, but I have some step siblings.
Okay.
So I got two. My mom and my boyfriend Kenny aren't married yet, but I still call his daughters my sisters.
Your boyfriend or her boyfriend?
Her boyfriend. Sorry,
okay,
not
yeah.
mine.
I thought it was her boyfriend, but I thought I'd just ask. Yeah.
Hers. So Lexi and Maddie, I kind of consider sisters.
Okay, cool.
Because I've known them for long enough. We have a good relationship with one another. So they
Very
always
cool.
ask where I'm at if I'm not with my mom.
Yeah. And how old are you?
I just turned 24 in June.
24. He may be the youngest podcast interview we've done.
Yes.
Hot Seat podcast.
Yep. I was super excited actually when you sent that group text out, because I remember when you announced it maybe a couple months ago now.
Yeah.
I was looking at my mom. I was like, that'd be really cool. Like I was just actually talking to Tim before we started recording, and I was like, I thought that was a great idea to kind of learn about people's stories that maybe you don't even know
See, that's the thing. And so Tim has been saying, hey, we need to do a podcast for a long time. And I'm like, what would we talk about? And then it's like, why don't we just get people's God stories and share them with others? And so there's just something very powerful about that, right? Yeah. And so nobody is following Jesus today for no reason, right? And so as people share their stories, it strengthens and encourages all of us in our journeys as well.
Right.
Yeah, I've had more conversations about the podcast around church lately than probably ever. We had Doug on a couple weeks ago, and I had people that didn't really know Doug, and they're like, "That's that guy that plays the guitar up there every week," you know. And they were so excited because they felt like they knew him from seeing him every week, but they never talked to him. And so it was kind of like the icebreaker when they meet him in the hallway, or they're able to go up and say, "Hey, Doug, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely something where you can almost meet somebody without kind of meeting them.
Yeah.
And then when you see them, you're like, "Oh, hey, I know you from the podcast.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
Yeah.
I'd like to, get to know you better." You know what I mean? Kind of introduces you to people you didn't even know.
So how long have you been coming to Crossroads?
Around 2 years now.
Around 2 years.
2 years. Yeah. I started coming. My first time here was Mother's Day of 2019. It was the first time I came.
Is that right?
Yep, because the only reason I actually came...
Yeah, this is a good story.
So my mom that year wanted... I asked her what she wanted for Mother's Day, and she doesn't like it when I buy her physical objects because she doesn't think I should be spending money on her, basically. I'm a young guy. I have my own living situation and bills and just getting started. She's like, "I don't want you spending money on me." Like, "Mom, I have my own source of income. I can buy stuff for you now." That's not that big a deal. I want to. So that year, she said, you know what? I don't want you to buy me anything. What I want you to do is come to church with me. And at the time, that was when 309 was around with Pastor Sarah. And so she kind of explained it to me a little bit. And she was like, that's a little more casual. It's not in the big cathedral part. I think that'd be a good stepping stone for you. And we've kind of talked about this in the past with our discipleship band, but I was never really a churchgoer to begin with. And my mom always kind of says, first off, before I say this statement, I do not consider this a failure on her part, but she will say she feels like she failed me in that regard because she never took me to church. I don't view it that way because obviously I'm sitting here talking to you guys. But she will sit here to this day and say, I feel like I failed him in that regard. So I said, okay, let's go. I'll go on Mother's Day. And I'll be honest, before I went that one time and I was like, all right, I did my sonly duties. Whatever. So, then I'm trying to think of when, maybe a week or two later, I started dating a girl and, she said, okay, if we're going to do this, you got to go to church. That's a deal breaker for me. And I know you're going to be going originally because I told you to, but a year from now, you better have your own relationship with God. You're not going because I told you to. You're going because you want to go. So I was like, well, crap. All right. I guess I'm going to keep going. So I did it originally to make the girlfriend happy at the time. But so that's how I started going. And then we broke up about 3 or 4 months later, but I still wanted to keep coming. I had gotten to that point where, first off, before I go any further, I did get the okay from her to talk about this with her before anybody starts to.
Oh, you did?
So I did ask her,
Oh,
I did ask
nice
her. I was
you.
like, hey, I'm going to go record this podcast, and I want to make sure it's okay if I say your name, talk about our relationship a little bit. She was like, totally cool. So, so anyways, we'll keep moving. So we broke up a little while later, and then basically I wanted to keep coming. And it wasn't necessarily because I fully was committed yet, but it was almost like I needed something to keep my mind off of that relationship a little bit. And I was still new with work, so it wasn't necessarily work. Obviously was helping keeping my mind off of it, but I wanted to come here because of that, and I wanted to search God for that reason. But before that, I really hadn't had much church history at all. I grew up in East Peoria. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Cross Point Church. It's off of Meadows.
By
like the Antique Mall.
A friend of mine used to be the pastor there.
So I lived very close to that. And my first actual church experience was kind of revolved around Cross Point Church. And it was a couple friends from high school. It was Tim Brown, Noah Bond, and Brandon Palmer. Brandon Palmer I still talk to today. But they had a group called All Squared, and it was through that church. And essentially what it was is they got young high school kids involved in ministry, basically. And they would basically say, hey, if you come and talk about God for an hour, you can come play kickball, or you can come play, or you can come have a movie night. So I would go to that, and maybe we'd meet at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. I'd go, we'd do our whatever we were reading in the Bible, whatever chapter, verses. And then after that hour, we'd go do those activities. Well, I never went because I wanted to talk about God, to be totally honest with you. I went because for the social aspect, to see my friends, and I didn't have that connection yet. So I don't really consider that my introduction. I still talk about it because I was in that group, but I never was really there for talking about God.
It was a part of it, though.
It was a part of it. So then I went to respiratory school, started that in 2017, graduated in 2019. And then, like I was saying before, I met Addison there, who was the girlfriend I was talking about before. And when I first met her, I thought I wasn't a huge fan of her, to be honest with you. And it's funny how that works out. But, so we went through the program together and, started dating, and then dropped the church bomb on me. And then, so I started going. We broke up, we graduated in May. I think it was like 4 or 5 months or something. I don't remember. But when we broke up, like I was saying before, I wanted to keep coming. And when I had my first real spiritual, physical moment, I don't remember exactly what day it was, but it was in November of 2019. It was at a 5 o'clock service, and I just got done working that day. And I think my mom was there. I can't remember if she was there or not, but there was a special sermon that you were saying, and I will always remember it because you basically closed it out with, God will never give you his future plan. You're never going to see what he has in store for you if you don't let go of your past. If you don't let go of what you already had before, you're never going to get what his plan is for the future. So I was like, dang, like, and when you said that, I physically felt almost like what was holding me back for so long. It was almost like that first step to releasing that relationship bind on me. It was that first real getting past that. And I mean, I physically felt like, I remember coming up to you afterwards, I was like, I mean, I felt like this chill just like go through my body. And like my body would physically shake. And it was like, I almost could see like at the cross, like almost see him like standing there almost. So it was like, that was the first moment where I was like, okay, holy cow, this is like a real thing. Like,
wow.
Like this is a thing. Like,
I remember you coming up and chatting with me after the service that day. Yeah. So how did you know that was God? I mean, what you were
I think
feeling.
I just kind of, I think it was the feeling. Yeah. Cause I'd never felt anything like that before. And I know like, you know how you see like ghost hunters or something like that. They have like the chills or whatever. I don't want to say it was like that, but it was just so like a rush of an emotion and like something that's hard to explain.
Wow.
So it's just.
You felt like the Holy Spirit was touching you though. That's how you
felt like he was literally inside of me.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
that is so cool.
So I kept going, kept coming, and I work every other weekend, so I can only come every other weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a couple of other times afterward where I had those moments.
Yeah.
But I don't think I really had there was a couple of things that I always struggled with since then. And it wasn't really until I would say when I bought the house, when I was truly like 100% over that relationship, over everything that kind of happened, started moving on with my own life. And that's where I really started, I think, to kind of connect with God. And that's when we just started that discipleship band around that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really, and Uncle Mike, another fun fact, Uncle Mike Pickell
Yeah.
and Stacy Pickell, that's
Uncle
my uncle and
Mike.
aunt. And Katie and Allie are my cousins.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to them. Hi guys. I didn't tell them that I was doing this. I probably should have told them that.
No, that's awesome.
They would have been super excited.
Oh, they'll love it.
Yeah, it'll be a nice little surprise, I guess.
Yeah. So then it was last summer. I mean, probably I was just having these, like, man, there were some guys in our church that were kind of new to the deal, new to the faith, or like that God just put on my heart. And like we were starting to talk about discipleship bands, you know, which are part of our discipleship model, right? Where you know people and you say, hey, do you want to go deeper? You know, even maybe than a grow group where you really share life with one another. And so God just put like, you know, probably 4 or 5 guys on my heart. And I'm like, oh, I just really feel like I need to make time, you know, for that. And honestly, the pandemic actually helped me find time to do it. Right. And so then we started meeting, it was like during the pandemic.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Much.
And we went through that Basics of the Wesleyan Way.
Yep. That was a great book.
Yeah. You talked about that.
Yeah, which I keep talking about. Like, I want to use that somehow with maybe my music teams in some way, you know, like, but just figuring out how to navigate going through that, you know, but that was a great study we did. Yeah.
And so we started meeting on Sunday afternoons and at 3:30 and praying for one another and working on sharing our testimonies. Yeah. Yeah. It was cool.
It was awesome. I am super excited to get that.
Yeah.
Back up and running again,
I know. We met from like December through like May. And I'm like, oh, let's keep going through the summer. And then it's like, oh,
Life
sorry, can't do it this week.
happens
Oh,
and-
can't do it this week. Oh, we'll be gone. So
everybody is just super busy.
Yeah,
in
so
the
we're
summer.
going to start up again though in the next couple weeks. I'm
Yeah,
going to send an
I'm
email out
super
and say, let's
excited.
do this.
I'm
Yeah.
super excited because there's a lot that's happened in my life since then. Since
Oh,
the last
man.
2 months.
Oh, yeah.
Tons of stuff.
Awesome.
So that was kind of part of the reason I wanted to come on the podcast, because if I could go on and have, it doesn't have to be a young guy, but I had a young guy my age and mine, that's struggling with whatever. It doesn't even have to be something church related. It could be something, maybe you're struggling because you got a B in your biology class. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if there's somebody that
For me, it would have been a C
heard
minus.
it. Right.
Need to get that C minus up to a C.
Yeah, that's funny. If I could help, like if it was one person that heard this and it could help get through whatever, whatever they were going through, then it's worth it.
So tell us,
You
what
know?
has been God been doing in your life over the past
A lot.
few months?
I
Yeah, let's
feel
hear
like
it.
I have changed so much since, kind of a bombshell. Dad passed last couple months ago.
Yeah.
My dad passed away in June, on June 4th, a couple days before my birthday.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have changed so much, not only in a Christian, but as a man and as a person in the last 2 months, I think ever, really.
Wow.
Even compared to when my parents got divorced, I would say up until now, that was my biggest event, because I was kind of put in the middle of that. Kind of like, okay, it's up to you, kind of what do you want us to do? So for a long time, I had a hard relationship with my dad, because it was kind of his idea. It was like, hey, do you want mom to leave or do you want mom to go? And I was like, well, that's not really my choice, you know?
Whoa. So he put that on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was the one that ended up saying mom should just leave. So we did that and then went through a hard time there. I don't want to say like an identity crisis by any means, but anything to do with him, I really didn't want any a part of.
Yeah.
Anything, and I've kind of talked about this before, even clothes. Like I started wearing different clothes because I didn't want to wear the same things he wore. So it was really a hard time. There was a couple of years there where I really didn't want to be around my dad. And then he ended up getting remarried. And at first, I wasn't a huge fan of it because I felt like it was really fast. It was really soon. It hadn't even been a year yet. So I was like, you spent 20, I think I was 16 maybe. I don't know. I was a junior in high school. So 15, 16, however old I was, years. And less than a year later, you're getting remarried. Now I would not change that for the world because my stepmom is absolutely amazing and her family is amazing. And in my eulogy speech for my dad, I kind of explained that a little bit and I kind of opened up a little bit about that, saying I would not change a thing.
Wow.
About that, because I got very lucky as far as step parents go, and with mom's boyfriend Kenny, I'm very lucky in that regard. And from day one that I met them, they treated me like they'd known me for all 16, 15 years of my life. So they are amazing. I will always speak highly of them.
Wow.
So very proud of them.
Wow. Yeah. And so your dad, for those who don't know, he had complications. Was it liver?
Yeah. So he had an alcohol problem, I'm going to say. And he had been going to the hospital for something called hemoptysis, which is basically when you keep throwing up blood, and having internal bleeding issues. So he had been going back and forth within the last 2 years. And I kind of knew that it was probably going to be coming. I didn't know it was going to be now, but I kind of had a feeling, it was going to be coming. And so when we left the hospital, we had a game plan. He admitted, which this is what originally kind of tipped me off as maybe it was his time. He admitted that he had a problem and that he wanted to go to rehab. I had never heard him say that before that night. So that's what really kind of tipped me off at first, like something's up, something's different this time. And I just kind of had a feeling. After I left the hospital, especially working as a respiratory therapist, you get that sixth sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did go home and pray that night for a long time. And when I woke up, it was pretty much the first phone call I pretty much woke up to. I mean, I was on my way to work when I got it. It was like at 6:15 or 6:10 or something in the morning. So, so I started my day like that. And, I talked about this with, in my eulogy speech, but the day he died, all of the problems that we had, everything that, granted, we did get some of that resolved, but everything just evaporated. It was like none of that mattered. It was like all of that just got lifted along with me, and it was like it didn't matter what we went through. That love for my dad was still there. Like, there have been things, I actually just thought about this the other day. Sunday, I was like, man, there's been so much that has happened in my life. I wish I could tell Dad, you know? And, I never had that.
I wish you could tell your dad.
Right. Yeah. Like, the one person I would want to talk to is Dad.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's been tough, but I will say my relationship with God has benefited from it, because I don't think I've ever prayed as much as I have and been gifted some things since. And we've talked about before too. I've always struggled with, I'm a more social guy, I would say. I don't want to say I'm a social butterfly by any means, but I do like going out and enjoying my time with friends and family, and talked about my struggle with relationships in the past, how whenever we'd go out, I would be pretty much the only single person there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I didn't even want a relationship at the time, really, but when you're out with 5 other guys and all 5 guys are married or in long-term relationships, it can bother you a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and my dad always teased me, like, when are you going to bring home a girlfriend?
Oh.
When are you going to get a girl? Like, you got this great job.
Did you ever get any of that, Tim?
Well, you know, I would say I relate, because, you know, when I was very young, you know, in my college years, you know, being a musician, I was playing with guys that were like, you know, 10, 15 years older than me, that had families, that had kids. And it was, you'd go out, and sometimes, and like, you're the only single person, and everybody's got their wife or their kids there with them, and you're going like, am I late to the party, or, you know?
And it wasn't like it was just one friend group. There's a couple of friend group. I call one of them the Costco group. I don't work at Costco, but all of them do. I've just been integrated into that friends group, because my best friend from high school works there. So he was just like, you should just start coming. So I call them the Costco group.
Coming to Costco, or coming to hang out with the Costco?
Coming to hang out with the Costco group. Okay. I've just been integrated.
Yeah.
Like, when we go out, they're like, oh yeah, we all work at Costco except for Patrick. He's integrated. He's one of us now. So yeah. So then I got my high school group with a couple of guys and girls there, and then some people that I've met here.
Yeah.
But all of them pretty much were in relationships. There was not a single person that I could relate to. And
you mean a single person, or not?
Like, not a single
person
guy, not one other like single guy.
Yeah.
That was not in a relationship.
Okay.
At the time,
okay,
I was the only one.
Gotcha.
And I do want to talk about this a little bit, because I feel like it's very important, and I'm very proud of it. Being 24 years old and you're still a virgin, that can be hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to change it any other way. I know we've also talked about that in the past.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you're a young guy and you have that pressure of other guys being like, hey, like, let's go out to the bar and let's get you a little drunk and let's get you talking to some girls, you know, like being guys, being dudes, you know? And, so that was another thing that I kind of struggled with for a while. Now I don't really care, but, I've come to terms with it, and I'm proud of it now.
Don't.
But I did struggle with that for a while. Yeah. I would say like my early 21, 22, 20 range, like beginning of college, I would say that was a struggle for me.
Yeah.
For sure. Now I don't care.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I've always loved your courage, and you're willing to stick with your values, even if others don't hold those values, right?
Yeah.
So where did that confidence come? Where did that
I never thought of myself as a very confident person, but I would say Dad, because Dad was a very confident person.
Yeah.
My mom is too, but I would definitely say more my dad. I would say he was very, I don't want to say my mom doesn't believe in me, but he would always, I shouldn't say she didn't talk highly of me either, but literally all the time, whenever he met anybody, it would be how highly he thought of me and the confidence that he had. So yeah, I would say that. I would actually say very recently, within the last 6 months, especially since Dad passed, I've developed that self-confidence more because I remember, funny story, my mom one day was talking to you. I don't remember if it was at a church sermon or something. And came up and you were like, your son, he is exceptional. And then you would like make the face and like she would get her eyes wide open. She'd be like, exceptional, like the sounding it out, like emphasizing. And people at work always believed and said, how good I do at work. And like 2 years in, I'm an airway manager.
Yeah, you're like crushing it there.
Yeah. And I teach at ICC too, only after a year. So
wow.
It was like,
and you bought your first house.
Bought my first house at 23. Just turned 23 at that. Basically 22 when I bought it.
That builds a lot of confidence. Because I would have to
you would
say,
think.
because when I moved down to Peoria and I was renting a house for a long time, and I finally was like, I think I'm going to stay down here and I should buy a house and not rent one for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And there was just something about being like single, having my own house and going like I'm doing this on my own, right? The confidence that
that's cool.
That again, like if anybody else is gonna be interested in me or something, they're gonna have to really offer me something great and be a great person and a great, partner, because I'm doing it by myself, I'm able to do this, and so it wasn't like that there was like this strong need to like jump into a relationship because like my life was a mess and I couldn't do anything on my own, or, there was just something about the confidence of like, and I'm relating to you. Cause it's like,
for sure.
got a good job, you're working hard. You've got your own place, and it's like, there's no like rush to like go searching for something that isn't needed,
Exactly. That was, And when I started coming to church and I started praying about it, one of the things was, man, like why do I gotta wait? Why am I the only one that has to, why am I the one that's only alone? But at the same time, now looking back, it wasn't that he wasn't listening. It was more, you might not have that, but look at all of the things you have. Look at everything that I've given you that they might not have.
Yeah.
Like it's not all about that sort of thing, and every time I come in, and if I have a trauma or when I go to put a breathing tube in, I always kind of do a mental, like, okay, God, like I need you to calm my nerves a little bit, give me the strength and the confidence and the skill set, even though I know I have it, kind of show and prove a little bit that I can do it. And when you go out and do it, that helps build your confidence a little bit, and
I got to say, this is just something where I think the church has not done a good enough job of like holding up the value of being a single person. Yeah. And like, and what you can do and the value of that. I mean, like it's just kind of like, how's the weather? You're talking about the weather, talking about the Cardinals, talking about the Cubs. Hey, who you dating? You're not dating anybody. What's wrong with you? It's right. Like, and so then it's this pressure, this expectation, and yet the two most influential people in history, Jesus and the Apostle Paul, were satisfied, lifelong single people. And why don't we talk about that more? And so people who are happy being single get this message that you're not complete as a single person.
Yeah.
And it's just, we've got to do better at this. We've got to do better at this. Just saying, no, this is a choice that you might want to consider. Jesus talked about the spiritual gift of singleness. Some people are devoted to God and have a life of singleness. I love when I went to Asbury Seminary, there are a number of professors who are celibate, lifelong singles. Celibate meaning they're not they're not having sex outside of marriage, and they're not married, right? Their devotion to God and the Christian community around them is enough, and it makes them happy. It's fulfilling, right? And so, I really kind of think shame on us for continuing to pressure single people into thinking that if they feel complete, that they are incomplete. That's on us, and we all need to do a better job of that. Of not just constantly bombarding single people. When are you going to get married? When are you going to settle down? Who are you dating?
It'll happen when it's supposed to.
If it's supposed to. If it's supposed to.
Yeah, if it even is. And I feel like I've just now kind of started to figure that out a little bit.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. Buying a house at 22 years old in Peoria was not a part of my plan at all.
Yeah.
Buying a truck, the specific one that I bought, and for the price that it was not a part of my plan. Dating a girl out of respiratory school was not a part of my plan.
Yeah.
It just happened because it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And obviously being 23 and losing your dad, that's part of nobody's plan.
Yeah.
But everything happens for a reason, and there's always a silver lining with that. And some of the things that I've always prayed for and asked for are kind of starting to come to fruition a little bit. And you start to see things a lot differently. You kind of take appreciation for things a little bit more when you have something like that happen. So
talk about the last couple months. I know it's because I lost my dad. I was 30. Was it 30? No, I was 29 when my dad died. And so not much longer than you. And he died through diabetes related stuff and kidney shutting down, and then had an accident. And so, but I remember it shocked me so much.
Yeah.
But then it was like, there was this, I was always obsessed with his health and afraid of him dying young. And yet I couldn't control it. And then it happened. My greatest fear happened, and then at the moment afterwards, I remember the moment after I got the news, I remember going, okay, my greatest fear just happened, and I'm still breathing, because I didn't know. And so then it really does affect us in so many dramatic ways. So the last couple months, it happened just it's very new to you.
June 4th. Yeah. That's when it happened. So 2 months.
So what have the last couple months been like? I mean, how have you felt? You said a lot has happened. I know a lot has happened. Talk about it.
So I will say, to start off with, I feel like I'm in the best place that I've ever been, which might be weird to say, losing your dad in 2 months. But truly it is. So since then, my birthday was 3 days later, and it did not feel like my birthday at all. That was a really hard day, and Father's Day was obviously hard because that was like 2 weeks after. So June was a little hard, but I kept going because that's what my dad would want me to do. That's kind of been my mindset these last 2 months, and that's where a lot of the self-confidence has kind of came from, even more than at the start of this year when it kind of started to build up. I would say since he's passed, it's really just skyrocketed. Even to the point where like my friends have even mentioned it a little bit and seen like there's some change. But the month of June was hard. But I kept going. At that time, I was still training to be an airway manager, which, for people that don't know what that is, that's basically the badge that says you can put the breathing tube in people. If you guys have seen Grey's Anatomy or any medical show.
Sure.
I could run the ventilator before, but I couldn't actually put the tube in.
That's
now I can
airway
actually put the tube in.
Yeah.
I can do that now. So at the time, he knew I was doing that. But I wasn't done when he passed, and there were some catch-ups with meeting a specific doctor, and Dad would want to sit there and say, like, keep going, do not let up just because you're having a hard time now, like, get it done, son. That was always his saying, get it done, son. That's what he always said. So I kind of bothered him a little bit about that. I kept on their butts, but we got it done. So we got that. I don't want to talk about this point too much, but did meet somebody
Oh, hey.
I don't want to talk about it too much because it's very new.
Okay.
But got the courage to actually say something to her in person.
Yeah.
And before, that would have never happened. So yeah. So been on a couple dates, and we'll leave it at that. But yeah, we're just having fun getting to know one another.
Cool.
So yeah, did do that. Did my first couple of intubations since then. And ever since the more and more has happened, the more and more I'm like, okay, yeah, God might have taken one thing, right? He might have said, this is your dad's time, but I still have things planned for you. Like, this is just one phase. This is just a season.
Yeah.
You know? And that season really, granted, there are days, like I mentioned earlier, on Sunday, I was having a little one of those days where I was like, man, I wish I could tell Dad about, in particular, a date. I was like, man, like he was so interested in that. I wish I could tell him. But yeah, so even though one thing has changed and you've had something really bad happen, life is still going on, and he still has great things planned for you. He still has a whole future planned out where some of the things that you asked for 5 years ago, you're going to get now. You know, it's like, okay, you asked for this, and this is, you might not have been ready that yet, or wow, totally butchered that one. You might not have been ready yet then, or maybe that wasn't your time yet, but now it is. Now it is your time. You know, you have learned and followed me, and maybe not to a T, but you could do better, but you are trying.
All of us.
And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Sometimes when we ask for things, at the time we ask for them, that thing's going to get in between us and God. And then when the time comes that he knows that it's not going to get in between him and God,
right,
they start to like blossom up. And it's like, wow, like I talked about that years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's so good. So one thing I think this is really a great point that like everybody needs to just let sink in. We are afraid of bad things happening.
Yeah.
We think if it happens, my life in every good aspect will come to an end.
Yeah.
Right? We can't imagine having good things on the other side of it. And so we live in fear of catastrophic events. We live in fear of these things all the time. And what you're saying is this thing that you were so afraid of, this thing that brought you so much pain, this thought, and, you know, your dad's sickness and alcoholism, it happened. And surprise, there's all these good things that have happened since.
Yeah.
Right? And not only that, but I love what you said, like all of the pain and all the hard feelings you had melted. And, you know, it was replaced with nothing but love.
Like,
you know,
like literally evaporated. Like it literally just left my body the same way that when I was talking before, when I was that November sermon, when I felt like God rushed into my body, it was almost like he totally just took it away. It was like, okay, let me take all of this from you. Let me hold it, and you can do your mourning and you can do your healing that you need.
Yeah.
You know, let me help you. This is going to be hard for you. And that's something that I've definitely gotten better with. Whenever I'm having a bad day or something, I'm one that believes that being in a bad mood is a choice. I know that not a lot of people agree with that.
I agree.
But like, you could be mad about something, whatever. But if you come into work and something 2 hours ago you're still mad about, and you're just choosing to be mad about it because you can be, I'm not a big, I don't like it when people do that. Everybody gets mad, but.
Well, I want to say this. I think everyone needs to take this as a test case, right? So you have chosen to have a resilient, hardworking attitude despite challenges. And you are 24, and in the time I've known you, you've gotten continual advancements and promotions and responsibility, right? And so I want to tell anybody who's listening to this, who's blaming other people
Yes.
for like them not going very far in life or holding them back. I think it's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Your attitude is your choice. And people with a great attitude, people want them around. People give them more responsibility. They do better. They thrive more.
Mm-hmm.
What a great reminder for all of us. A great attitude pays off.
Mm-hmm.
With compounding results all over your life.
It just helps with it. You're absolutely right. It helps with everyday life. It helps with your job. It helps you with your social connections there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a part of the reason why I'm doing so well is because people respect me so much and say you're such a nice guy and your attitude's always positive. Even if something bad, the day that my dad died, I actually went into work that day because I wanted to be doing something.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be there because I still knew people needed my help. So I've always been one to say, you can have your moment. Like, obviously, everybody gets mad, everybody gets sad, everybody has emotions, but it is your choice whether you hang on to that.
So, where did you learn that?
I
Are
don't
you
know.
naturally that way, or did you learn that as an aha moment? Like, oh, I get to choose.
I think it was more aha, and when I started coming to church more, because I kind of started to give God a little bit more. Like, okay, I'm going to give you this. I want you to burden or hold this for me if you can, so I can go and do my job and do my thing and live my life. I think it's kind of just something I've kind of figured out.
Wow. You know what's funny? I'll tell you something funny, because I remember November 2019, I was preaching about attitude. That was the message series that month. And so I'm not going to take credit for it, but it's funny as we're talking about attitude, those are some of the things that we were hammering home every week. Your attitude is your choice. Your attitude, all these things.
Well, attitude is so much. I've been reading a couple musician biographies, and when they talk about how they got, like a musician got a certain gig or they got connected somewhere, it was because they were their attitude. They were a good hang. People liked to be around them.
Yeah.
It made other people feel positive. Like, that took them further than any sort of skill set. You know what I mean? Like, the attitude is something that, I think, I personally believe, will get you further in a career, further in life, further just by being positive and always encouraging and things like that.
Yeah.
It will far surpass any sort of skill set because people will always say, well, we can teach you how to do whatever you're not that quite good at. But the attitude part seems like something that it's very hard to teach somebody.
If there's two things I want for my kids, only two things, it's that they accept Christ as their Savior and Lord and follow Him, and that they understand the power of attitude.
Yeah.
Right? Because no matter how much you get beaten down, your attitude will determine whether you get up. Right?
Agree.
Your attitude will determine whether you learn to love. It'll determine whether you're generous. It'll determine whether people want to be around you. Anything can happen to you in life, and your attitude can help you climb up. Mm-hmm. If you choose to have a victim attitude, an entitlement attitude, a bad attitude, you will stay down. You will blame everyone else, and they'll go on with their lives as you sit there and just deteriorate as a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're in the Olympic season, so the Olympics are going on, but you think of athletes, the athletes that go out and say, I'm going to do well today, actually do well, and the ones that say, I'm just having a bad day. Like, that attitude takes form on your performance. And
That's very similar when I had the attitude of, I'm going to go get this airway manager badge. I'm going to go get this respiratory stuff done. I'm going to go ask that girl out. I'm going to go out with my friends. It's all about choice. I'm going to be happy today.
Yeah.
Granted, you might have your season still, but whether you hang on to that and whether you inflict that onto other people is on you. Yeah. That is your choice.
Yeah. If you can wake up every day and say, I'm going to be the best version of myself today, and I'm going to follow God today and do the best that I can. I mean, that,
Because, there's been times where it's like, I've walked into church, work, I'm like, do I really, do I want to make the choice to be mad today? And there have been times where I'm like, I'm going to be mad for a little bit. And then maybe I'm like, you know what? No, I don't want to be mad. anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be, I'm
Yeah.
kind of over it. You know, it's always, I feel like that's just kind of been something I've kind of
Yeah.
just naturally done.
Yeah.
So,
You can always find a way to have a good attitude all the time. And I think you're a great poster child for that. So, hey, we gotta call time.
Yeah.
We gotta try to keep it a certain length so people will listen. This has been amazing.
Thank you for
Tim,
having
any
me.
summarizing thoughts?
I don't know. He's
What are
just,
some of the highlights?
I don't know. I just related a lot to your story. 'Cause,
Yeah,
you know,
thank you.
You know, I think I might have said it in our podcast that we did the first time, but like when I was young, I was single, but like I was dating this idea of like music and trying to, you know, and so like I didn't feel the need to like rush into like a relationship, even though like everybody else around me had one, you know?
Yeah.
And so like I totally like understand like the season that you're in, you know, that like, you know, I'm single and I'm fine, you know, like there's no like, and like you said, you know, like to where the church sort of kind of, I don't want to say emphasizes, but like, hey, when are you going to get married? You know, you should find a lifelong partner or stuff. And it's like, you know, but all that comes, in time and just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's planned. He knows when it's supposed to happen, and he knows who it's supposed to be with. So
Well, thanks for coming in, dude.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man. All right. I want my kids to listen to this one.
Yeah. If I can make anybody, the last thing I want to say is the main reason why I want to come on. It doesn't have to be a young guy, but I feel like a lot of things younger kids will relate to. But take me as an example. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. You know, there's always a reason. Keep going. Keep pushing.
Praise God.
yep. Amen.
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 Thanks, dude.
You're welcome.
All right.